Good afternoon, everyone. It is Wednesday, August 24th, 2022 at 3 o'clock p.m. And that means it is time for Women in Business. Now, I'm really excited to be with you today. There have been some developments since last week. Namely, I put up a Patreon and a Buy Me a Coffee to try to elicit some support for the show. And I'm very pleased to say that there were some people who enjoy the show enough and like it enough that they were willing to support. And I want to say thank you to Charity Gibson, Cindy King, Meredith Kowalski, Lisa Shaw, Sheila Ryan, Lindsay Salcido, Jillian Allen, Jerry Lee Medeiros, Eric Campbell, and Jane Swansea for coming through and supporting the show and helping me out. And that means the world to me. You don't even know. And if you are interested in supporting the show and you haven't done it or want to do it again, whatever it is, I have put up links to the Patreon and the Buy Me a Coffee donation link in the comments. And as I said, I really, really appreciate everyone who has taken the time to support the show. It means so much to me. You really have no idea. And here is Cindy King. Good afternoon, Cindy, one of our supporters, which I very much appreciate. And what we're talking about today is owning your choices. And one of the reasons that we're talking about this is because I was going through some older blog post the other day, and Eric Campbell is here. Thank you for being here, Eric. And he says, happy to be a little part of your good work. And I so appreciate that, Eric. It means the world. You have no idea. So as I said, the other day I was going back through some old blog posts, and I found this one I'd written on owning your choices. And this was a couple of years ago, May of 2020. And I thought, dang, that's a pretty good post. And I said some kind of profound things in this post, which actually I want to read this post to you. It's only 5 paragraphs long. It's not very long. But when I read it, I was like, that actually makes a lot of sense. I think I maybe need to bring this back to the forefront again, because I know there are some people out there who are struggling with owning their choices, with making decisions, with dealing with the consequences of their actions or things that happen to them. So I want to share this post with you, and forgive me for reading, but I didn't memorize it. Like I said, it's about 5 paragraphs long. It's not very long. So here we go. When I was young, in my early 20s, I had a chip on my shoulder, the size of a ship's mast. I thought everything that was wrong with my life was someone else's responsibility. I never linked the choices I made with the unhappiness in my life. As I got older, I wish I could say I started to realize that a lot of what happened in my life had to do with the choices I made. It was my choice to hook up with the guy who told me he couldn't love me my freshman year of college. It was my choice to feel surprised and hurt and bad about myself instead of angry at myself for wasting time on a jerk. When he contacted me a few months after he dumped me at the end of the year and told me that it wasn't that he couldn't love, it was just that he couldn't love me. Sadly, it took me a while after that before I learned my lesson about both the men I picked and how my choices impacted my life. It's always easier to blame external forces than to accept responsibility. Your parents didn't treat you well or take care of you as they should have done. Kids in your school were bullies and unkind. You had too much money or not enough. Your supervisor had it in for you. It was your family, friends, society that made you do it. There's always something that can be blamed if you're looking hard enough, and it's kind of a seductive option. If nothing in your life is your responsibility or the result of your choices, then you also have no responsibility for fixing your mistakes or learning how to choose better. Here's the thing, though. You only get one life, and there's only one person who should be in control of it. You. Yes, owning your choices is harder. Yes, it sucks when you screw something up and you have to admit the mess is all down to choices you made. It also goes without saying that even when you're trying your hardest to make good choices, you'll sometimes choose badly. Life doesn't come with a guarantee or a rule book or a scale to make sure everything is balanced and fair. Sometimes you can do everything right and the bad guys win. Still, there's something empowering about standing in the wreckage of your life, acknowledging you made bad choices, and setting about making better ones. Taking responsibility for yourself and what you choose sounds like chaining yourself down, but it's actually setting yourself free. Choosing, even if it's not the wisest choice, is better than drifting through life, letting circumstances and people buffet you where they will. If you make a bad choice, learn from the experience and make a better choice next time. Now, okay, I wrote that a couple years ago, so I was reasonably wise a couple years ago. I would say I'd been through some stuff, but that blog post is the result of years of making bad choices, of refusing to make choices, of ignoring good choices that I knew I should be making. And as a result, I've stood in the wreckage of my life more than once and looked around and gone, yep, you really screwed the pooch on that one, kid. You really did. And then started rebuilding. And eventually, yeah, I did learn better. Now, do I still sometimes make bad choices? Oh, yes. Yes, I do. And oftentimes now the bad choices are more trying to avoid something that I don't really want to confront, or choosing to do something that I know isn't good for me, but I do it anyway. Those kind of things. Thankfully, the bad choices have gotten less over time, and that makes me really happy. But they're still there. Just because I've gotten smarter about it and I understand how it works better doesn't mean that sometimes I don't choose poorly. I think we all do sometimes. Sometimes, even though you can see that it's a bad choice, you still make it. Anybody who's ever stuck with a person that was bad for them understands that. You love the person and you want to be with them and really hope that it's going to work out, but sometimes you just know that it won't, and you still choose to ride it out, at least for a while, because you're hoping against hope that something's going to be different. It happens. And I love this comment from Cindy. Thank you, Cindy. You made a great choice in your outfit today. You look really nice. Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate that. I have to admit, I am a fan of this blazer. I feel very stylish in it. So thank you. I'm glad you like it. So I want to talk about the subject of our little get together here today. And that is how to own your choices and how to make better choices. And the first thing is take responsibility. It's a very simple thing and it's a very hard thing, all in one little package. And the reason that it's simple is because it's just a choice. It's just you saying, I'm building my life and I am consciously making choices. And if I make a bad choice or a poor choice, that's my responsibility too. And, if you've ever heard Aaron Montgomery talk about anything, he talks about 100% responsibility. Same theory. It's basically you're in charge. It's your life. You choose the bad, you choose the good. If you screw it up, it's you. If you do amazing, it's you. It's all you. But the thing is that a lot of people, like I said when I was reading the blog post, a lot of people blame it was the way their parents treated them, or it was the way they were raised, or it was the religion they were brought up in, or it was the bad relationship they had, or the bad marriage they had, or it was what they were taught in school, or they were always told they were stupid, or whatever it was. And yeah, all that stuff is damaging. I mean, I don't want to minimize the damage that can be done by those sorts of things, because yeah, I'm a walking testament to the damage that can be done by certain things. But at the same time, the things that happen to you don't have to define you. The things that you endured don't have to set the course for the rest of your life. You make the choice how you deal with those things. You make the choice whether you get therapy. You make the choice whether you make amends to people you might have hurt. You make the choice if you learn from your bad relationships and choose better. You make the choice. It's a conscious thing. You choose. And when you choose, you're taking responsibility, because that's the other half of choosing. When you choose, you have to take responsibility for the outcome of your choice. And that's the hard part, because we don't want to choose because we don't want to have to take responsibility. We'd rather it just happen to us somehow. And a lot of times, even though we chose, we'll still go, oh, that just happened. That was awful. How did that happen? It didn't happen. You chose it. Now, yes, I understand that there are things that we choose and they're horrible. And, anybody who's been in an abusive relationship or been a victim of any kind of abuse, mental, sexual, spousal, whatever it is, those are situations that are hard to get out of. And those are situations that you didn't consciously choose because you didn't know that that was part of what was going to happen. But it's still a choice, and it's still your responsibility to figure out how you go forward from those things. And yeah, I understand getting away from an abusive spouse is tough. Getting away from someone who's sexually abusing you can be tough, and there can be ramifications from that. I get all that. I do get it. I'm just saying, at the bedrock, you have to take responsibility. And that's a hard thing, because it's really hard especially when you've been abused, to say, I take responsibility for that. And I don't necessarily know that it's that you have to take responsibility for the abuse. It's that you have to make responsibility for the choice. You have to take responsibility for the choices you made because of the abuse, if that makes sense. And I hope it does. Things happen to us, yes, and some of them we didn't choose or wouldn't choose, and sometimes we're just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and sometimes shit just sucks right down to the ground and there's nothing you can do about it. But you still have a responsibility for how you react to those situations, or what the aftermath of those situations brings, is, I guess, how I want to say it. And this is a tough one for some people to take, because they feel like, I didn't choose to be in that mass shooting. I didn't choose to be the victim of abuse. I didn't choose these things. And no, you didn't. You didn't choose that. But you choose how you react to it. And that can make all the difference. It really can. So I think that's something that you need to really be aware of, is that I don't know who this is, because it says Facebook user, so I hope whoever wrote this, they'll tell me. But the comment is, get it, girl. Taking responsibility means choosing to take the ability to respond and for the outcome of the situation. You can be pitiful or powerful, but you can't be both. Choose powerful. And I love that so much. I'm stealing that line. You can be pitiful or powerful, but you can't be both. I love that so hard. And that's really summed up in one sentence, basically what I was trying to say with this whole thing, which is, you choose how you react to the circumstances. You may not always choose the circumstances, but you choose how you react to them. And yeah, you're not always going to make the right choice. I mean, my early dating life is a testament to not making right choices. And that's largely why I stopped pursuing that aspect of my life, because I was like, I'm attracted to everybody who's horrible. I don't know why that is. But I made a choice that, okay, right now in the space that I'm in, I wasn't able to make the right choices to have the kind of relationships that I wanted. So I took responsibility and I said, okay, I'm just not going to focus on that area of my life right now, because I'm not ready and I'm not the person that I need to be to attract the kind of relationship that I want. And I may never be that person. I don't know. I think I'm more likely now than I would have been 10 years ago, but who knows? But I took responsibility for that. I said, okay, I have been through these relationships and they all have had one thing in common, which is they were all painful and they were all sad and the guys were not great and they didn't treat me well. And I need to learn how to be better at this. So I'm taking responsibility for that. And it could be anything. It could be I'm overweight and out of shape and I want to get healthier. It could be I never finished my college degree and it's always made me feel inferior. It could be I hate my job. It could be I want to start my own business. It could be I want to be a better parent. I want to be a better friend. It could be I have family members that are just toxic and I need to not deal with them anymore. It could be anything. But if you just whine about it, if you just complain about it, if you just say it makes me sad and I really hate it and I wish it would go away, nothing's ever going to change. If you take responsibility for it and you take action to get to where you want to be, and you take responsibility for the consequences of things that maybe you did when you were in pain or you didn't know any better, and you make amends to whoever you need to make amends to, and you get rid of the people and situations that aren't serving you anymore, your life gets a whole lot better. So at the bedrock, your life is your responsibility. No, you don't choose all the circumstances in it. No, you don't choose all the things that happen to you, but you choose how you respond to them. Be pitiful or be powerful. I love that line. It's really good. The next thing to do when you're owning your choices is acknowledge the harm. And this is a twofold piece of advice. Acknowledge the harm that was done to you and get the help you need to get to repair whatever was broken or hurt. And acknowledge the harm that you, in lashing out or in making bad choices and dealing with the harm that was done to you, did to other people. I'll give you a tip. One of those is way easier than the other, and it's not the one you think. Getting help for yourself is pretty easy, honestly, because I think you reach a point where you realize that your circumstances or the way you're living or the way things are going or the choices you're making are just toxic and you just can't stand it anymore. And you decide that you do anything to make it better. And so you then get help and you do the work. Acknowledging the harm you've done to other people, even other people who've harmed you, is a lot harder because that's acknowledging that you hurt somebody or that you made a really bad choice and caused pain in someone else's life. And I mean, these choices could be you had a drinking problem, you stole, you lied, whatever it was. It's not generally, when you're doing harm to someone, you're not generally being a nice person. Let's put it that way. And it might not be intentional. You might not be intentionally trying to cause harm to other people. But sometimes when you're trapped in your own pain, you can cause a lot of other people pain just because you can't deal with what's happening to you. It's a rough thing to deal with. It's a rough thing to sit and look at. And I honestly think that it's one of the major steps in owning your choices and taking responsibility. And it's why in a lot of the 12-step programs, there is a step called you make amends. You go to the people that you have harmed through whatever your addiction or problem was, and you make amends for what you did. And the amends are made without the expectation that they're going to say, I forgive you, or I understand, or anything. It's just, I'm acknowledging and I'm taking responsibility for the thing that I did that caused you harm. Now, the caveat to this, you can make amends to someone and still choose not to have that person in your life. You can say, yes, I realize that my choices have hurt you, and for that I am sorry, but I choose not to have you in my life, which sounds like kind of a contradiction, but it really isn't. You have the choice of who is in your life and who isn't. And you have the choice to say, this treatment does not serve me. It is not helping me. It doesn't make me feel good about myself. And so therefore, I'm not going to have a lot of contact with you. I'm not going to say that's easy. I'm not going to say there won't be a huge guilt trip at times, because hello, there will be from some people. But the point is, you have the choice. You can say, this does not serve me, this does not work for me. And you can do that and also say, and I acknowledge that this may be hurting you. And for that, I am sorry. But here's what I need from you in order to have a relationship with you. If you can't do these things, then I can't have you in my life. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think that's entitled or selfish or anything like that. It's just, this is what I need. I mean, my relationship with my father is fairly estranged, and a lot of that is because he will not talk about anything. And I need to air some of these feelings, and I need an acknowledgement from him that there were things that he did that were not optimal. And I don't think I'm ever going to get that, honestly. And that's, that is what it is. But I can acknowledge that I'm sure that my choosing not to talk to him hurts him. And I am sorry for that. But if we can't even have a simple conversation about things that happened, then I can't have any hope for change. So that's where, that's my choice. And I'm not going to say it's easy, especially with people that you care about and you would like to have in your life. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But I think acknowledging the harm is vital, because you need to grieve and be sad for the things that happened to you. And you also need to take responsibility for the things that you might have done to others. Even if it was inadvertent and you did not set out to harm anyone, sometimes in your own pain and grief and sadness, you can do things that hurt other people. Not intentionally, but it happens. And when it happens, you need to acknowledge it. That's part of taking responsibility too. The next thing, trust yourself. And this is one that can be really hard if you've been in situations where you've been belittled, where you've been emotionally abused, where you've been told you're dumb or you don't make good choices, or, whatever it is that you've been told. Women need a man around to make sure that they're on the straight and narrow, whatever it is. Trusting yourself can be really hard, but here's the thing. I would venture to guess that most of us, if not all of us, have a little voice inside us somewhere. And some people will call it listening to their gut or their intuition, or the universe is talking to them, whatever it is. But there's something in you that will tell you when something is right for you and when it isn't. And sometimes you choose not to listen to that voice because you're hurt or you're angry or you're sad or whatever it is. And you just decide, okay, I'm just going to do this thing, even though my gut is telling me that this is a really bad choice and I shouldn't do it. I think we've all had some of those. And what you need to learn to do is trust yourself, and trust yourself that you can get out of situations that aren't working for you. Trust yourself that you know what isn't working for you. Trust yourself that you can take responsibility for things, and that you can change things, and that you can make things better. And trusting yourself is really hard, especially if you've been in any kind of an emotional abuse situation where you might have been gaslighted, or where you might have been constantly told that your perception of events was not right, that you didn't know what you were talking about, that things were really different than what you could see and feel and experience with your own senses. It's really hard then, because after a while you do start wondering if maybe you are wrong. Maybe your senses aren't trustworthy. Maybe you are messed up and you're seeing the world as something other than it really is. Maybe you are crazy. So you have to get back to a place where you can trust in your own perceptions and you can trust in your own choices. And that's not always easy because, especially if you've had people telling you for a long, long time that you can't trust your own perceptions, it's hard to make the leap to, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. But if you listen, and sometimes that does take getting very quiet and just listening to your body and your mind. It might take journaling, it might take therapy, it might, whatever it takes to get to that place where you know that your perceptions are right. And spoiler alert, people who don't mean the best for you, or people who have their own goals or things that they want, will sometimes try to manipulate you to get you to do what they want you to do. And part of the way they will do that is by telling you that your senses can't be trusted, that the way you're interpreting the situation is not the correct one, that the way they're treating you is loving and is kind and is the way that families behave or whatever it is, or spouses behave. And if your gut is telling you no, it's not, listen. Because if you're in a bad situation, something in your physical being is probably going to tell you. When I was an adolescent, I had migraines like you would not believe. I had skin rashes. I had breakouts and I mean my hands would crack until they bleed. And I never, and the rap or the what I was always told is, oh, well, you have really sensitive skin and you have all these health issues and blah, blah, blah. In retrospect, it was my physical body reflecting the tension I was under and the stress I was feeling and the voice in my head and the voice in my gut that was saying, this is not a good situation. You need to get out of it. Because when I got out of it, all that stuff miraculously stopped. So my physical reaction was because of things that were happening around me. And once I was able to get away from those things, it stopped. So listen to your body, listen to your gut, trust yourself. If you're always getting stomach aches before you go to your job, maybe you need to listen to that. If you always get headaches before you have to go visit your family, maybe you need to listen to that. Whatever it is, if you meet somebody new and something in you just says, ooh, I need to be careful about this person, listen to that. Don't assume that what you think or what you feel is invalid just because other people have told you in the past that it is. There you go. The next way to own your choices, and this is a hard one, especially if you've been told that your needs and wants and thoughts don't matter. Speak up. When somebody is encroaching on your boundaries, tell them. When you feel uncomfortable, tell them. When you're hurt or sad or angry or you need help, say it. And this is I'm awful at this. I will freely admit it. And a lot of it is because for years I did speak up and I never felt like anybody was listening. So I just kind of stopped doing it, is honestly how it was. So it's definitely one of those things where you need to vocalize. You need to say what you feel, and you need to find people who will listen when you say what you feel and not invalidate it and not tell you that you're wrong and not give you crap about it. And that's sometimes harder than you would think. But I think speaking up is something that you learn, and sometimes you have to start small. And by starting small, I mean, I like potatoes rather than rice. Or I don't really like white wine, I like red. Or I don't really want to go for a boat ride, I want to go for a hike. Start with small things that don't have a huge impact and don't have a huge amount of weight on them. If you end up going for a boat ride instead of a hike, the world isn't going to end. Nobody's probably going to have a huge amount of problem if you want red wine instead of white. If you want to watch this movie instead of that one, probably everybody in your group is going to be fine with it. So start with small things and then work up to the bigger things. I don't like it when you make jokes at my expense when we're at a dinner party. I'm not comfortable with you patting my butt when we're in public, whatever it is. And I mean, those are just examples, but those are more fraught examples. And it's a skill. It's a skill like anything else. But part of taking responsibility and owning your choices is speaking up when things aren't the way you want them to be, and speaking up when people aren't treating you as you should be treated, and speaking up when things are making you uncomfortable or annoyed or making you feel small or making you angry or whatever it is. And a big part of speaking up, I have to say, and I could do a whole show on this, and at some point I might, is learning how to argue. Because a lot of arguing when you're in a dysfunctional situation is attacking and basically using any weapon you have to try to hurt the other people in the argument. And that's not the way arguments are supposed to work. So, excuse me, I need a little drink here. And that's not the way arguments are supposed to work. Arguments are supposed to be discussions where you're trying to solve an issue and come to an equitable conclusion. That's what they're supposed to be. But for a lot of people, arguments are let's score points and I have to get my way no matter what. So you have to learn to argue. And I'm not going to go into the rules of arguing right now because we'd be here for another 45 minutes or so, and I don't really want to do that today. But basically, the main thing is just to learn how to use your voice. And as I said earlier, start small. And this is, think about when a baby learns to walk. When a baby learns to walk, they don't go from sitting on their butt to standing and walking around the room. They get up and they fall over. And they get up and they totter a few steps and they fall over again. And their mom or dad stands them up and holds their hands and they walk for a little bit so they get the idea of how it works. And then they pull themselves up on the table and they stand for a while. And then they walk a few more steps, and then they walk a few more steps, and pretty soon they're running all over the house. But it isn't a process where it's 1 minute I'm sitting on the floor and the next minute I'm walking across the room. It's a series of movements, so you learn how the process works. You learn how it feels and how to be comfortable in doing it. So start with small things. Start with things that don't have any real weight to them. Start where you feel comfortable. And that might be writing down in a journal that you don't like things. Or it might be picking some minor thing and expressing your displeasure or dislike about it. It might be talking to a therapist. You don't have to go from I have no boundaries to, oh my God, I have all the boundaries, which is sometimes what people do because they think it's an either or situation and they don't understand that it doesn't have to be totally open grassland or fortified castle. There can be something in between that is, the boundaries can be a little more porous. They can be a little more fluid in some areas. You also have to, and this is another part of starting small, you may have to start at what do I like and what don't I like? Because when you've been in a situation that's been abusive, emotionally or physically, when you've been gaslighted, you may not know what you like and what you don't like. You may not know what you want and what you don't want because you haven't had any agency to figure that out. So you may have to start with just journaling or just making a list, or just sitting with your therapist and saying, I do like peanut butter, I don't like avocado. And it sounds silly, but honestly, you can get to that level where everything is so reactive that you really don't know what is something that you like or something that you dislike. And you don't know what kind of treatment is acceptable to you and what isn't, because it hasn't been a choice for so long. So start small, start with the basics, start with the bottom building blocks and work your way up. And as you get better at it, and as you get more healed, you'll figure out what your boundaries are, and you'll figure out what you like and what you don't like. And you'll figure out all these things that you need to know to own your choices. But don't beat yourself up if it's hard for you at first, if you need to start at the base level. Because, if you've been in a situation for a really long time where your agency was taken from you, where you weren't really allowed to make choices, or where your choices were ridiculed, or where you were always told that your choices were wrong, you may not know how to make choices, and you may not know what you like and dislike, and you may not know what makes you uncomfortable or what's acceptable and what isn't, because you've been accepting the unacceptable for so long. So start with the basics, start with the small things, and work your way up. This next one is a good one. I love this one. Ask who says. Because a lot of times the choices we make are choices that other people have put in our heads. Nice girls don't like sex, or you should be a lawyer. Lawyers are prestigious, or girls don't play sports. Boys don't cry. Boys don't like dance. People who like classical music are snobs. Whatever it is, ask yourself, who says? Am I making choices based on precepts that were told to me by people that I really don't think much of and I don't trust, or by people who didn't treat me well? Do I really want to live with what they're telling me? Is that something I really want to do? It's a good question, because honestly, a lot of times you may not, but these scripts and these precepts get in our head. If you get told enough that you're stupid, you start believing you're stupid. If you get told enough that if I leave your mother, she's going to kill herself, then you start believing that women need men to be safe, or that women are, not stable, or whatever it is. If you get told these things enough, you start to believe them. If you get told that you're fat and ugly and nobody's ever going to love you, then you start to believe that. And when you make choices based on these beliefs that maybe aren't true, that maybe somebody who was hurt themselves was telling you, that maybe somebody who didn't know how to make their own choices and own them was telling you, that maybe somebody who needs to make some amends was telling you. So you need to look at what you're basing your choices on and decide if those things are true for you or not. And there could be all sorts of things. It could be people of a certain race aren't trustworthy. It could be races don't mix, so you can't love anyone who's another race. It could be safe jobs you should have a safe job. You can't go into the arts. You should be a teacher or a nurse. It should be women can only be teachers or nurses. It can be any of those things. And when those little bits of information come up in your head, ask yourself, who says? Is this a credible source? Is this something that I want to believe? Is this something that is demonstrably true? I mean, just because somebody that wasn't very nice to you tells you something doesn't mean it isn't true. But you need to look at all these beliefs, because these things that are in your head and these things that you believe also inform the choices you make. And if you want to make better choices, you need to get rid of the beliefs in your head that are telling you things that aren't true. Simple as that. This is a really interesting exercise. And I have to say, I sat down once and I did it with a piece of paper and a pen, and I just wrote out things that I'd been told or things that I thought or whatever it was. And then I went through and said, okay, who said this to me? Or what experiences have proven this or not proven this true to me? And what I found out is a lot of the things that I was acting on were things that really weren't true or came from people that I really didn't respect. But they'd been in my personal tape deck for so long that I was just playing them over and over instead of thinking about them. And honestly, I think the who says game is something you should ask yourself once a year at least, and just say, okay, what's in my head right now and who put it there? And how much do I trust the people who put these thoughts in my head? And how much are these thoughts serving me the way they should be? It's a good question you should always ask. This is another big one. And this leads back to when I read the blog post in the beginning. I said it's easier to blame everybody else instead of taking responsibility. Oh, this was my favorite game for years when I was younger. Nothing was my fault. Everything was somebody else's fault. My parents didn't treat me well. I was abused. I was this, I was that, and I didn't get a chance. And I was bullied in school and everybody was mean. And so nothing was my fault. And the fact that I couldn't get my life together was not my fault because everybody was mean to me and nothing was fair and the whole thing. And I don't want to say it's fun, but it almost is to place the blame on other people, to say, it's not me, it's you. Which is I'm sorry, a rotten thing to say to someone. It's not me, it's you. You suck. And it's the opposite of empowering though, because if you have no agency in your life, if everything is somebody else's fault and you're just this twig that gets buffeted in the current, then how are you ever going to build a better life? How are you ever going to get away from the things that you don't like? It's a good question. It's a really good question. And it's also toxic to you if you're always looking at the people around you and going, you treated me badly and you treated me badly and you're screwing up my life right now and you're screwing up my life right now. And if all the institutions that you deal with are screwing up your life and nothing is ever your fault and nothing is ever your responsibility, then you're not really an adult. You're basically like a 45-year-old kid. And we're not meant to stay kids forever. We're meant to grow up and take responsibility of our lives, for our lives, of our lives, whatever you want to call it. And you can't do that if you're always blaming other people. If everything is somebody else's fault, if the agency is always another person's and never yours, then okay. And as I'm saying, don't blame things, I want to blame the sun because it will not stay in one place for 5 seconds. So my light keeps changing and that's really annoying me. So I'm being a really bad example of my own point right now. But the sun is also something I can't control, though other people are also something we can't control either. So blaming is an easy way to try to get out of things, because if everything was done to you, then you have no responsibility for it. But you do, because even if it was done to you, you have a responsibility for the choices that you make about what was done to you. So stop placing blame. And I will actually say, I had a boss when I was in my 20s who did me one of the biggest favors that I ever had in my life. And I didn't realize it at the time. But I was really, really negative. The place I was working, which was a place that I really loved, had been sold to another company, and the managers that I really, really liked had been let go and moved on to other things. And I was just a cloud of gloom. I was negative. I was bitchy. I was horrible. And finally, my boss sat me down one day and she said, look, I get that this is a tough situation. It's tough for all of us, but you are being horrible. You're a dark cloud. You're no fun to be around. It's awful to work in the same office with you. You need to get your shit together. Excuse my language, but That was what she said. And I don't know why that particular conversation worked when other ones hadn't. Maybe I was just ready to hear it. Maybe I was tired of myself. I don't know. But it stuck, and I started changing my attitude, and I started working on being more positive, and I started taking responsibility, and I stopped placing blame on other people, and I became, honestly, a very different person. Now, there's a long way from that person to who I am now, but I would say that was the start of the journey. And so I owe that boss a huge debt of gratitude, because if she hadn't taken the time, I may never have figured that out. And a lot of what changed was I took responsibility for myself and stopped blaming others. Yes, the company sold. Yes, the managers that I liked were gone. Yes, a lot of the new policies that were coming in were not great, but it was what it was. Now, subsequently, I left that job and moved on to something else, but that was a positive step, because I realized that this situation was not a situation that was going to work for me. So I took responsibility to go elsewhere. So stop placing the blame. Take responsibility. If you don't like the situation, if you don't like how you're being treated, change it. You can do that if you take responsibility. And finally, last one, remove toxic people and things. This can be a tough one, because sometimes it requires letting go of people that you really like and you really enjoy, but you just know that they enable behavior that isn't positive for you, or they don't treat you well, and you need to not have as much contact with them. Or it could be a place that you liked to go, or an event that you enjoyed, that you know that every time you go there, you just get messed up, and you shouldn't do that. And I'm not going to lie, that's tough. I mean, particularly when it involves, family members, there can be a whole culture that will tell you that you should be accepting no matter what, and you should always be close to your family, and family is the only thing that matters, blah, blah, whatever. And it's tough to make that choice, to realize that the best choice for you is to not have this thing in your life anymore, because it may be something that you really love. It may be something that you really care about. It may be something that you really want in your life, but it just doesn't serve you. And the best choice is to not have it in your life. Not going to lie, this is not an easy one. And taking responsibility for making these choices means that you may have to hurt some people. And that's not fun either. And that's not easy either. But it's also realizing that you have the right to say, you know what, I know that you're a friend, or you're a family member or whatever, but you don't treat me the way that I deserve to be treated. Or what you say to me doesn't make me feel good about myself. Or you won't talk to me about these issues that we need to resolve before we can have a relationship. And because of that, I'm choosing not to have a close relationship with you. It's not always easy. Oh, that was Charity. Yay. And Lisa says, good afternoon, Lisa, in case I show up as Facebook user. Hi, Lisa. So removing toxic people and things is not easy. It can be really hard sometimes, because you sometimes have to make the choice to let go of things that you really love. And I mean, one of the things that I learned when I was first dealing with getting my health in better condition is that one of the choices I had to make was that I couldn't do dinner dates as often, because I tended to take dinner dates as, ooh, I can eat all the things that I don't eat normally. And I didn't have a lot of portion control. So I had to learn to say, let's go do something else. Let's go for a hike. Let's go to a movie. Let's go to a play. Let's do something other than this. Let's do something other than eat. because eating is not good for me right now. As my health journey has gone on, I've had to eliminate certain food groups from my life, some of them which I really love, but they're not healthy for me and they have bad interactions with some of the meds I take. So I just have to accept that there are certain things that I don't do anymore. Those are the responsible choices. Now, do I always make the responsible choice? 98% of the time. We're going to be kind and say 98% of the time. It's not always, but sometimes, most of the time. But like I said, I'm not going to say this is easy. And I'm not going to say that making the choices that are of the most benefit to you are always going to be the choices that are the easy ones. It would be awesome if it was that way, but it's not always. So pretty much that's my list. And I know we're a little bit under an hour, but my voice is starting to go. And for those who are wondering, are we ever going to see a guest on this show again? Yes, I have to admit, I haven't been pushing for guests as hard as I maybe could have been, because it's been kind of fun to have these chances to talk to you one-on-one, so to speak. But I do want to start bringing guests back in. I have a list of people that I want to approach, and I am going to do that. I also have an idea for some panel shows that I want to do. So some of you may be getting emails. Who knows? We'll see. Ooh. But thank you all for being here today. I appreciate your support. I appreciate those who are supporting me on Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee. I appreciate you that are here watching and commenting. This really means a lot to me. You have no idea. Lisa says, I love the one-on-one time you give us. Thank you, Lisa. And Cindy says, thank you for sharing your thoughts. It does make us all think. Oh, I like that. Thank you. I'm so glad. All right, everybody. I will see you next week. Who knows? There may be a guest. There may be another topic. I have to say, I've really been thinking about doing a show on the history of women's rights. So if that's something that interests you, let me know that, because I think it would be an interesting show, or an interesting couple of shows. But I don't know, something I'm throwing around in my head. As I said, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for your support, and I will see you all next